When you go problem you go in further in the courses or so, then you will find it very easy. So don't be scared that it is a sort of a very difficult thing or so. So coming to the basics, the idea of showing this slide is that whenever you write a Doppler in your report book, in your report, always write with a capital D because it is the name of this person who completely changed the field of cardiology practice. So that is he is an Austrian physicist also. So always that is his surname, so always write with a capital. Now the basics of echocardiography is don't jump into echo straight. You must have a good clinical assessment of the patient first. Take a history, examination, ECG, X-ray, and both the operator and patient should be comfortable while doing an echo. If one of you is uncomfortable, you cannot do it. Always attach an ECG tracing to see for rate, rhythm, and timing. Just give you an example. Now, this patient was sent to the echo lab. Now, the doctor orders the patient, the sister to send the patient. They send it without seeing anything. Now, as soon as the patient comes in the echo lab, we attach an ECG. We find a heart rate of 35 and we find 2 to 1 atrioventricular block. So we just do a very quick echo and send the patient back. So that is why it's always important to attach a record ECG training, and record always a BP in certain conditions, and you will be told that how important it is. Then, as Dr. Gupta has pointed out, a good 2D examination is the basis of all echo. Once you have done a good 2D examination, we'll tell you today the next step is do a color flow mapping, and the next step is do a Doppler. So the sequence of events in all echo examinations are 2D, color flow, and Doppler. And use all conventional and unconventional planes. Never be shy of mentioning the limitations of the study. For example, these are conventional planes. You have been told suprasternal, left parasternal, apical, subcostal, right parasternal. Now, sometimes when we get a pleural effusion, now see, this is a pleural effusion with a flotus in it. And if you put a probe, you can see sometimes a good cardiac contractility and the cardiac imaging. So these are unconventional views, but these you will be known when you proceed further in the course. Today it will be a bit difficult for you. Now, what is the basic hemodynamics of heart? Now, pardon me for showing this slide, but it is very important because many of you might have forgotten. Now, the basic anatomy hemodynamics is that the venous blood from the superior and the inferior vena cava goes to the right atrium. I hope you know this. From right atrium through the tricuspid wall, it goes to the right ventricle. From the right ventricle through the pulmonary wall, it goes into the pulmonary artery to the lungs, where it is oxygenated. And then after this oxygenated blood from the pulmonary veins go to the left atrium, and through the mitral wall, it goes to the left ventricle, and then through the aortic wall, goes to the aorta. Now, the wall between the atria and the ventricle, that is the tricuspid and the mitral walls, are known as an atrioventricular walls. Atrioventricular wall means between the atrium and the ventricle. And these can be roughly told as a ventriculo-arterial walls or a great vessel. The point to note is that the tricuspid and the mitral wall, that is the atrioventricular walls, they open in diastole, close in systole. So they open in diastole, close in systole, while um, the walls which take blood to the greater artery like pulmonary artery and aorta, they open in systole and close in diastole. So there's opposite. Atrioventricular walls open in diastole, close in systole. These pulmonary and the aortic wall, they open in systole and close in diastole. So remember, these are some important basic hemodynamics which will come into picture repeatedly during the course. Now you will find basic definitions. Now remember, whenever we say systole and diastole, it usually refers to the ventricles. Otherwise, every chamber undergoes fistole, diastole, and systole. Suppose the left atrium is empty, it doesn't fill the left ventricle, patient cannot survive even for a minute or so. So, systole is ejection when you come to ventricles, and diastolic is filling. This is opposite in the atrium side. They fill in systole and they eject in diastole. So, but whenever it is not specified, and when we say systole and diastole, it usually refers to ventricles. And as you know, the filling occurs in diastole and ejection occurs in systole. Then certain other terms you will frequently hear, as the name indicates, a pressure or a volume overload. A pressure overload is a state in a cardiac muscle which has to contract against an increased afterload. Afterload means the load after ejection. For example, in left ventricle, when there is an hypertension, it's an increased afterload because the left ventricle has to eject against an increased load. Same like an aortic stenosis, because there is a narrowing of the valve, the left ventricle has to eject against an increased afterload. Same thing, right-sided valves like pulmonary hypertension, pulmonary stenosis. So the pressure overload means that the chamber has to contract against an increased load, which is after the contraction, while the volume overload is a too large a volume of blood in a cardiac chamber. So, for example, in the LV, aortic regurgitation, it will produce a volume overload. Why? Because the left ventricle is being filled by two sources. One is the left atrium, one is the aorta. So this extra blood comes into the left ventricle. So that is known as a volume overload. Similarly, mitral regurgitation. Say it gets the left atrium gets blood from two sources, from pulmonary veins and from left ventricle. So these are some of the volume overload things that we, and in this, remember, in volume overload, to accommodate this extra volume, the chamber enlarges in size. So these words will be coming up repeatedly to you, and this will be further explained in everything. Now, we'll hardly show one or two slides of Doppler, because if you try to read Doppler from a textbook, after few sentences you will stop, you will close the book because it is such a complement. It is such a sort of a complicated physics. Now, frequencies, that is, sound waves travel in certain frequencies or in waves, and one wave is equal to 1 hertz. As you must have heard, 2.5 megahertz. For example, here you see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So there are 4 cycles and 4 waves, 5 waves. So that is equal to 5 hertz. So that means one cycle is equal to 1 hertz. So when you say 2.5 million megahertz, that means 2.5 million cycles per second. So, but this is not going to, it is only to tell you that one cycle is equal to 1 hertz, but it may not from a important from a clinical point of view, because we'll be mainly dealing with a clinical Doppler. Now comes, which you must have forgotten by now, ECG systole, ECG diastole, ecosystole, ecodiastole. Now, you see this is an ECG tracing, this is a P wave, this is a QRS complex, this is a T wave, and this is a P wave. The interval between the QRS complex and the T wave is known as systole, and the interval between the T wave to the onset of the QRS is known as diastole, and P waves indicate a atrial contractility. So this is very simple to know. From the onset of the QRS complex to the T wave is systole, from T wave to the next over QRS complex is diastole. I hope it is clear now. For example, here you see this is the this is this from QRS complex to the T wave is systole. from the end of the T wave to the next QRS complex is diastole. And this is the P wave. So I think this should be clear to you, or when you revise, keep in mind. Now, the same thing, remember, echo today is difficult for you because not, you are not too aware of the various views. This is a mitral wall. This is a mitral wall. This is anterior leaflet, posterior leaflet. Now, as you know, the mitral wall opens in diastole, as I told you just now. And here the diastole starts. So this coincides with the opening of the mitral wall, and the mitral wall closes in systole. And this coincides with the QRS complex to the T wave. So that this is just to show you that whatever you see in this, suppose for some reason your ECG is not working in the machine, you can take this advantage that this opens in diastole, closes in systole. So this is a very classical example of a mitral wall or anything which opens in diastole after a T wave and closes in systole at the QRS complex. Similarly, the ventricle contract in systole. They contract in systole and they dilate in diastole. And here you see the systole starts from here and it goes up to the T wave, and this is the systole, and beyond that is diastole. So this is just to tell you about ECG and echo. Now remember what I told you just now, always have a good, and echo consists of three portions, always have a good clinical information, have a good anatomic information by 2D echo, and a hemodynamic information by a Doppler. So these are the three things which should be seen. For example, what Doppler records is the velocity of the blood. Wherever you record a Doppler, you are asked the Doppler records velocity, whether it is in the blood, wall, blood vessel, anywhere. And these velocity are converted into hemodynamics. Hemo means blood and dynamics means the pattern. So that will be coming later on. Here it is your, so the Doppler records only the velocity of the blood, and it is very important to record a correct velocity, as you will come to know later on. Now, what information does Doppler give and what does it record? As we told you, it records the velocity. Direction will show you in the next slide or so. So basically at this, up to this level, Doppler records a flow velocity. Now, for a Doppler, this is the only physics slide. For a Doppler, what is known as the Doppler effect or shift, there are three basic requirements for a Doppler shift. Number one, a sound source. Now, remember, can you hear me still? Hello?
Yes, sir.
So,
Yes,
for
yes.
example, the usual example given always in a textbook or various lectures is a whistling train which is coming towards you in a railway station. So, if you have experienced that when the railway engine which is whistling comes towards you, you hear a loud sound, and then when it goes away, its sound goes down. So the sound source is the engine, and sound receiver is your human ear. But the basic requirement of a Doppler shift, and this occurs because of change in frequency. But the basic thing is they must be moving in relation to one another. For example, if you're standing on a railway platform, the train is also standing, and the railway engine gives a whistling sound, it will be of the same intensity because neither you are moving, neither the engine is moving. It's of the same velocity. So, but here, as I told you, when the source becomes toward the receiver, it gives a louder whistle, and then when it goes away from you in the railway platform, the whistle being stopped. So these three are the basic requirements. In a clinical Doppler, the sound source is the transducer, which sends multiple sound waves. The receiver are the multiple red blood cells. You have the millions of the red blood cells because hemo means blood. All the blood elements they come into this, and the shift depends upon the and the how much is the shift is the velocity of the RBCs. So remember, transducer is a sound source, receiver is multiple RBCs, and the more the RBCs, the more the velocities. Now, this is what I told you just now. A, a sound source. I told you flow direction. Now I'm coming to this. A flow direction means when the direction is flow. Now remember this sentence. Whichever view you take, that is a parasternal, long axis, short axis, suprasternal, the transducer is always pointing from above downwards. That is from the apex, it is always pointing downwards. So the basic principle of a Doppler shift is that once the blood is going towards the transducer, it is above the baseline. And when it is going away from the transducer, it is against the baseline. So we'll show you, then you'll understand better what is positive and negative. Now, what is the principle? Now remember, I keep my left ventricle on the left side and right ventricle on the right side. Even if I don't write it here, that point which might have been told to you yesterday or maybe today, maybe next time, the tricuspid wall, the wall which is more attached toward the apical side is always the tricuspid wall. And the wall which is away from the apical side is the mitral wall. So here you see the tricuspid wall is attached more toward the apical side as compared to the mitral wall. So this has to be the right ventricle. Now you see the transducer is always pointing from above downwards like this. It is pointing like the downwards. So the blood which is going from the left atrium through the mitral wall into the left ventricle is going towards the transducer. So it will be above the baseline because it is going towards the transducer. So this is known as a positive Doppler shift. Now suppose any blood which is going from the RV to RA will be against the transducer direction. So that will be negative. So remember this, because the blood is going towards the transducer, hence it will be positive shift. And here it is shown. This is the mitral wall. You can see this is the baseline, and it is known as a positive Doppler shift because the blood is going towards the transducer. So this is the basic principle of a of a flow direction that toward the transducer, keeping in mind that apex that the transducer always point from above downward from this position. Now take this situation. Suppose there is a blood from RV to RA like a tricuspid regurgitation. Tricuspid regurgitation means the blood is coming from RV to RA in a regurgitation. Now this is going against the direction of the transducer. So it will be a negative shift. For example, you see, this is the tricuspid wall. It is negative shift. Don't worry about the other thing. This is only to show that the transducer, that the flow against the transducer has a negative shift that is below the baseline, and the flow towards the transducer has got a positive shift which is above the baseline. So this is important. Now see, this is a 3-chamber view. Now this is the aorta. This is the mitral wall. This is the left ventricle. Again, any blood going towards the throat from the mitral wall into the left ventricle will have a positive shift. Now the blood which goes from the LV to aorta will have a negative shift because the blood is going away from the transducer. So that will have a negative shift. So that has got importance that will tell you just now. For example, here you see. Now, this may be a complicated slide for you. Just forget about it. This is the aortic wall. Now, this is the aortic wall, and the aortic wall opens in systole. So this is systole, and this goes below the baseline. But here you see, there is a flow in diastole above the baseline, which means that some blood from the aorta is going towards the transducer and the aortic wall, and the most common cause is aortic regurgitation. So this is just to show in the same slide that the flow away from the transducer, which is in systole, is the forward flow, and the flow which goes back, which is in diastole, start from the T wave to here, it goes towards the transducer. That is the a positive Doppler shift and negative Doppler shift. That is just to show how we can see a aortic regurgitation from one of these things also. And this records the horizontal records the timing, and the vertical records the velocity. So this is Doppler shift. And if you measure the timing, it should be done on the horizontal axis. And if you see the velocity, it will be measured in the above or below the baseline. So we'll come to it again. Now, what are the Doppler modalities? Now, this thing will show you in 3 slides, because this is for the beginners and for the newcomers. That was the most difficult thing also. And although it is very easy, but it will take some time for you to understand as to what is the Doppler shift also. They are known as the pulse wave, continuous wave, and the color flow mapping. Now this I will repeat in 3 slides. Now, for example, you see. Now remember, you see the transducer is always pointing above downwards. In pulse wave, it doesn't matter you. It is not clinical. It is single element which transmits and receives the Doppler signal. And this I will show you just now. When you see a cut like this is known as a sample volume. I will let you know just now. In a continuous word order, there are 2 transducer crystals. One transmits and the other receives. Now, so forget about it for the time being. Again I'm showing you the same thing, a single crystal. So that means when the pulse Doppler sends an ultrasound, it transmits, listens, and then receives. Because if the ultrasound waves are continuously going, they will be destroyed or so, and unable. But and the basic thing is that they are unable to measure high velocity flows. So this pulse Doppler, they 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 record the low velocity flow, and if there is a high velocity flow, that is known as an aliasing. We'll tell you just now, and you see this sort of a cut is known as a sample volume. That way, wherever you put it, you record velocities only from that particular area. Now, in a CW Doppler, there is no sample volume. So it is a continuous transmission. It measures a high velocity flow. If suppose somebody asks you that what is the difference between a pulse and a CW Doppler, then say one thing, forget about it. Say the pulse Doppler records a low velocity flows, and the CW records all high velocity flows. That means all diseased flows are high velocity flow. Stenosis, regurgitation, and prosthetic valve, VST, that are high velocity flows. This has got a sample volume which measures flow at a specific site, and this has got no sample volume. And there is something known as a Nyquist limit. A Nyquist limit is the maximum detectable velocity which can be seen by a pulse Doppler, and beyond that, aliasing occurs. I'll show you the aliasing. And here, because it records a high velocity flows, so there are no no sample volume, and they are continuous thing. So the basic thing is pulse wave, low velocity flow, CW, high velocity flow. It can record from a very specific site by a sample volume, but it can record throughout the whole Doppler beam it records. And because there are certain restrictions on the velocity, they produce aliasing and no aliasing. Now see, now this is a pulse Doppler. See, you can see this cut. You can see this is known as a sample volume, which can be increased or decreased in size. We have placed it at the tip of the mitral leaflets, and we are recording the mitral velocity. Now, this so that this sort of a cut is known as a sample volume. Wherever you put it, you will find that you could record velocity from that particular side. So this is known as a sample volume. And you see, here you don't have a sample volume. The same cut, you don't have it, so you can continuously record a high velocity flow. So again, this is a sample volume which you place it at the tip of the leaflet and record the mitral velocity. And here you can see, and there is no sample volume you see on this side also. So again, the same thing, sample volume, no sample volume. Now, for example, this is just to show you, this is the baseline. These are the velocities in meters per second. It is written MSC. This is the lower one, and this is the sample volume. That means you can see this cut, that is a sample volume. You see the same place, the velocity here is maximum is 1 meter per second. This is 1 meter per second below it. And you see a CW has no sample volume and the velocity automatically increases. It was 1 centimeter here, it became 1.5 centimeter here, but that is just a sort of a basic to show you. You may see this line, but you will not see a sort of this type of a pulse Doppler or so. Now this is known as aliasing. Now in a Doppler, you must get a complete Doppler envelope. Now see, this is mitral valve. We have purposely put a pulse Doppler, purposely. And this is diastole, this is systole. Now this patient had a mitral regurgitation. So the mitral regurgitation has got a high velocity flow. Now here you see the whole mitral valve envelope is seen above the baseline, above, because they are low velocity. And here, one is cut here, one is cut here. You don't know from where to measure and where not to measure, because this should always be in one. So this is a aliasing when you interrogate by a pulse Doppler, a high velocity flow, it goes above and below the baseline, and you don't know from where to start. Because remember, in a Doppler, you have to see a complete Doppler signal in your recording. Now, same patient, you put a CW, the aliasing disappears. Because you will see the patients, it was 5.71 centimeters per second. So this is aliasing. And the one important measure to remove this aliasing is to put this. Now you see, it is above and below baseline is to go to a CW, and now see. With a CW, the aliasing has disappeared and whole of the Doppler envelope is seen. And because it is going away from the transducer, it is a negative signal. Again, you see, it is a systole coming from the QRS to a T wave. So this is how you remove a aliasing. Some methods are increase velocity scale and shift. This I'll just tell you. As for example, you see here it is 1 centimeter, here it is 1 centimeter. Now, if you take the baseline above, the space below increases in size, so the velocity at the lower part will be more. If you take a baseline below, the velocity above it will be high. I'm just demonstrating you. So again, you see this is a pulse Doppler. Now see, it was 1 meter and 1 meter. Here it becomes, we have taken the sample volume, we have and above, it becomes 1.5 meters per second, and this reduces to 0.5. So that is just to tell you that how you can increase a velocity. A velocity is increased in the opposite direction of the movement of the baseline. For example, here you see, it is 0.5 here, 1.5, because we have brought the baseline below. So when you bring the baseline below, the base above is the increase in velocity. But with a pulse Doppler, you cannot have that much increase in velocity. So the best is always to shift to a CW Doppler. This was only for the purpose of telling you, but a shift to a CW Doppler, as I see, So this will give you this is a aliasing. So remember all high velocity flows by CW, low velocity flows by pulse Doppler. So now you can know in which situation the pulse Doppler is used. At your level today, we will tell you only assess velocities across normal walls and vessels. Other things will come later on. So when you are interrogating a normal valve and vessel and the velocities are not high, you take a pulse Doppler. A CW to measure all high velocity flows across stenotic walls, regurgitant walls, shunt flows, prosthetic walls. These are all the conditions where you get a high velocity flow. So here automatically you can go to the CW Doppler. But today you remember only for across the normal walls or so. So the tips for the Doppler are use pulse Doppler in situations of normal flows. If whenever aliasing occurs, revert to CW Doppler. Use CW Doppler in all disease states where high velocity flow is expected. Then place sample volume at tips of the leaflets always. So, for example, if you want to see mitral wall, tip of the mitral wall, aortic wall, tip of the leaflets. And so, this is the summary of what we have talked till now, and this will be an important thing that basically when to use pulse Doppler, when to use the CW, and where to put your sample volume and how to remove the aliasing. Now, the most important requirement in Doppler most important is that you have to be as parallel to the flow as possible. Now, in a 2D echo, you get the best results when you are perpendicular to the structures. That is why you get a much better terrace than a long axis view because you are very close to the transducer. So because in a 2D, you get best results when you are perpendicular. In a Doppler, you get the best results when you are parallel to the blood flow. And here comes the importance of a color Doppler, which I tell you just now. If you are just 15 to 20% deviation, there is less than 10% error. So up to 15 to 20% off angle is required, but not more than that. If you are perpendicular to the structure, nothing will be seen. So whole Doppler results depend upon this thing that how parallel you are. And here we can take multiple views. You take wherever you are parallel to the blood flow. So now the important take home message is which view for which balls. Remember two basic dictums. This this may not be applicable to you today, but maybe after one or two lectures. In which view or views is this wall seen? That is number one. For example, tricuspid wall can be seen in RV inflow view, short axis view, apical view, subcostal view. So remember two basic dictums in which view or the views is this wall best seen and am I parallel to the flow? If you follow these two dictums, your Doppler results will always be will correct. For example, you see in a mitral wall, you can mainly take apical views, multiple views, pulmonary wall views, aortic wall, multiple views. Wherever, because in these views, the aortic wall is seen in many scan planes and you can be parallel to it. For example, suppose this is a parasternal long axis view, this is aortic wall, this is LV, this is mitral wall. Now the transducer is pointing from above downwards. So you are perpendicular to the flow. So this view is not ideal for taking any mitral wall or an aortic Doppler also. Because for aortic also, you are perpendicular. For mitral wall, you are also perpendicular. So this wall, so you have to basic remember that am I parallel to the flow? The first dictum is that can this wall be seen in which view? Then the second important dictum is that am I parallel to the flow? No, keeping in mind that the transducer is pointing from above downwards. While if you take this apical views, now you are see this is the mitral wall, you are parallel to the flow. The flow is going from LA to LB, and if you put your Doppler here, that is perpendicular, that is completely parallel to the flow. So that is the apical is the best view also, whether it is a 4-chamber or a 3-chamber view, because here you are parallel to the flow. Here both the dictums appear. Then number one, is this wall seen in which view? Am I parallel to the flow? Yes, you are parallel to the flow. For example, this is a short axis view. This is a right atrium. This is a tricuspid wall, RVOT, pulmonary wall, and pulmonary artery. Now, suppose you have to interrogate a pulmonary stenosis. Now, you see, the flow is coming like this because it is going away from the transducer. So, but you are almost parallel to the flow. So, this is a good view to take a pulmonary wall. And here you see, any tricuspid wall flow can be seen here because you are parallel to the flow. So, here you see whether it's antegrade flow, retrograde flow, you are parallel to the flow. So that means this is the view for a sort of a pulmonary wall and a tricuspid wall with multiple views, as I told you. So these are the basic things. Now this view you are not concerned now. Over a period of time, you will see this. Uh, you can see this type where you can see the pulmonary wall from the subcostal view also, but forget about it today. Now you see this is again. Now, if you again here, if you want to see mitral wall, suppose for some reason you're not seen for apical 4-chamber view, then this view again the flow will be, this is LA, and the flow will be towards transducer almost parallel. If you want to see the aortic wall, the flow is coming like this, and you will be almost parallel to the flow. So that is why you have to see whether you are in parallel to the flow or not. Now, why we say that taking velocity is very important. Velocities are converted into gradients. Gradients means a difference in pressure between the two chambers. Only remember this thing, a difference of pressure. And always this equation, a gradient is equal to 4 into velocity square. Suppose your velocity is 4 meters per second. The gradient is 4 into 4 into 4, velocity square into 4. Now suppose in the same patient, you have taken a wrong velocity. So when you have taken a wrong velocity, your gradients will also be wrong. You have to take a good velocity and the machine automatically give you the value. So your job is to record a good velocity from a multiple scan planes, and whichever scan plane gives you the maximum velocity, please take that view, measure it, and then convert it to gradient. So this is the importance of measuring a complete velocity, correct velocity. For example, here you see, this is a TR jet. The velocity is 5.54. The machine automatically collects 4 into velocity square. 5.54 into 5.54 into 100 comes to 122. So your job is to get a parallel flow and get the best velocity. And when you record the velocity, the machine automatically give you the value. So that is the importance of getting a good Doppler velocities. For example, here you see the aortic velocity. We have taken from various views, and again you see the peak velocity is 4.72. So 4.72 into 4.72 into 4, it give you an 89. Now, if your velocities are wrong, if you do not record this correctly, it may be underestimated also. And when we are in sinus rhythm, we always measure 3 cycles. One cycle, now you hear this may be slightly slow, this may be wrong, because all of them are measured in the expiration phase. So breathing should be stopped for that period when you are recording the velocity. So this is just to tell you that your job is to get a good velocity, and the machine automatically tells you the gradient. These are the gradients, PG is the peak gradient also. So the 4 into velocities. So there are two types of main gradients. 4 into velocity square is the peak gradient. It is related to day-to-day basis, hence may not be that significant. For example, you take a patient, you record a peak velocity, ask him to climb 10 steps or so. When he comes down, the peak automatically will increase. So that it is related to the blood flow, hence can vary on a day-to-day basis. In some situations, it is helpful, but in other, it is a 4 into velocity square, and the mean gradient is average of multiple instantaneous gradients. When you average multiple gradients, it is always more reliable. And this word you will be hearing again and again, velocity time integral. That is the distance in centimeters the blood travels in one stroke. And you obtain all these by tracing the Doppler envelope. So average is mean. So if somebody asks you, how will you take a mean gradient? Say we'll trace the Doppler envelope. For example, here you see, this is the mitral wall. We have traced the mitral wall both in the E and the A portion, and you get the whole velocity, peak and mean gradients. So if you would have taken only this, not traced it, you would have got only the peak velocity. But the mean gradients are when you trace the Doppler envelope, then you get all the measurements also, and that is important in valvular heart disease. Again, you see, here we have traced the Doppler envelope. When we trace the Doppler envelope, we get a mean gradient. This is the mean gradient by a tracing approach. So by tracing a Doppler envelope, you get the peak and mean gradients, and this is known as a VTI, velocity time integral. Again, automatically the machine gives you, that means the blood travels about 120 centimeters in one stroke. Here also you see the mitral also gives you a VTI, that means it travels 23 centimeters in one stroke. So this is how you calculate always a peak and the mean gradients. And remember, you'll find this very maybe difficult today, but over the next few lectures, you'll find it is very easy. So this is just a diagrammatic representation of the VTI, that this is the aorta, how much centimeters the blood travels in one stroke, that is calculated as a velocity time integral. Its importance will be told to you subsequently. So finally, in this up till what we have talked, the basic difference between a 2D Doppler echo is that the target in a 2D echo tissue, you are seeing the ventricular septum, you are seeing the mitral wall, aortic wall, posterior wall, all this. But in a Doppler, you are examining the blood also. So here you are getting a structural information, whether the patient has got LV hypertrophy, whether the patient has got LV dilatation and whatnot. And here you are getting a hemodynamic information by a Doppler. In 2D echo, you get the best results when you are perpendicular to the structure. Here you get the best results when you are parallel to the structure. And quantitation is saving. Many times you can get a semi-quantitative idea by a 2D echo, but more accurate is the Doppler. So these are the basic differences between the two, the echo and Doppler. Now coming to the color flow mapping, it was a major breakthrough. The advantage is that you can see the blood flow and it guides now this thing is the most important. It changed the whole concept of Doppler. When you are seeing the blood flow, you can put your Doppler parallel to the blood flow and you will get this quality. So that means most important one of the most important indication is that it guides a Doppler beam parallel to the blood flow because you are seeing the blood flow. When we did not have color flow mapping, we would to struggle to see that how we can get a good velocity. According to the universal convention, the flow towards transducer is shown as a red color and flow away from the transducer is shown as a blue color. So remember, the color towards transducer is red, away is blue. And for the time being today, it tells you that it guides Doppler beam parallel to flow. For example, this is static image. This is LA, this is LV. Now this is the transducer pointing downwards. So the flow is going from LA to LV towards the transducer. So it is shown as a red color. Now here the flow is going into the aorta. From the LV it goes into the aorta, and because it is going away from the transducer, it is a blue color also. So remember two things: flow towards transducer, positive Doppler shift; flow towards color towards the transducer, red color; away is blue color. So we have shown you two examples. Now you see, this is the apical three-chamber view. You see, this is the LA, this is the LV. The flow is going towards the transducer. So it is of a red color. And the flow which is going away from the transducer is the aortic flow. Now here you see, if you see carefully, in between, you can get a red flow coming from the aortic wall. This red flow coming from the aortic wall after the blue flow. That means there is some blood coming into the left ventricle from the aorta. So this immediately tells us that it is a aortic regurgitation. So that is the advantage of this color flow. See, so just a red color coming from the aortic wall means it is going towards the transducer. So it has to be diastole, and so it tells us that there is a mediate, there is an aortic regurgitation. So, but this is the red flow, this is the blue flow. Similarly, you see this is the pulmonary wall. So the pulmonary wall, the flow is going away from the transducer. So this is of a blue color. And you see some red color going from the pulmonary wall. That means this is the pulmonary regurgitation. This is the flow going towards the transducer. Don't get confused. Only remember today, flow up towards the transducer is of a blue color. Flow towards the transducer is of a red color. And remember, these are the normal flows and these are the turbulent flows. Turbulent flows, that they are of a multiple velocities or so. Turbulent means there is a mixture of colors. There is a mixture of colors. For example, you have seen red and blue. If you add them, they become partly green. Red and green become yellow. So there is a mixture of colors also. Because the beauty of this technology is that it must tell you within a minute where is the lesion. For example, suppose you get a case of a systolic murmur. It can be VSD, it can be MR, it can be pulmonary stenosis. Put a color flow mapping in the pulmonary wall. If it is no turbulent flow, no pulmonary stenosis is ruled out. So that if you put in RV, no turbulent flow, so turbulent flow means that there is a disease flow going. For example, again I will show you. This is the normal flow going from the mitral to the left ventricle, which is uniform smooth color. It is a uniform smooth color of red and blue, uniform color. And you see, this is a turbulent flow. This is the mitral wall, and there is a turbulent flow, which immediately tells us the patient has got a mitral stenosis. Because the flow is going towards the transducer, beside these multiple turbulent flows of a greenish blue color, outer color is always red. Now, if the flow is coming behind from the mitral wall towards the LA, that will be again a blue flow, that will be a turbulent flow. For example, here you see, now you see a flow coming, a turbulent flow coming back from the mitral. So this will immediately tell you that this patient of mitral stenosis has also got a significant MR. So this is how to differentiate between again I will show you, see a uniform smooth color, just a red and blue. But here you see a So here you see a, a turbulent flow towards the transducer and away. So that means this is how a turbulent flow looks like. Similarly, the same circle I have shown you repeatedly. This is the flow towards the transducer as a uniform red, and this is a very smooth blue flow towards the aorta as a sort of a smooth flow. But in the same, you see, I put a now you see, this is the aorta. You see a turbulent flow coming back here, and here you see a turbulent flowing going towards the transducer. It immediately tells us that there is a patient has got an aortic stenosis and aortic regurgitation. Again, compared with this, uniform flow, and even this AR is not turbulent. That means it is not such a disease and the blue flow. But here you see a turbulent flow, very marked AR with a bluish color, a greenish color, with a red flow, and this is known as these are known as turbulent flows, which you will see quite a bit of. So summary of Doppler is it provides blood flow information, be parallel as well as possible. So now what I showed you in the first slide was this is the sequence always. You take a good 2D echo and then you take a color flow mapping because this helps you in two things to see whether you are dealing with a turbulent flow or a non-turbulent flow. And if you and then you put your Doppler beam parallel to the flow and you get a good Doppler. So even in a non-turbulent flow, your aim should be to always record a Doppler with the help of a color flow mapping. Because some jets can be very eccentric and not straight. So you have to see a very eccentric jet also. In a Doppler sequence for at your level today is a pulse Doppler, and if need be going to CW Doppler, and in a disease state can go directly to a CW Doppler because you know that you are dealing with a disease state. That is why a clinical information is very important, and you take this also. So because if you are not doing any clinical exam, you will not know what you are dealing with. So this is the reason sequence always, and this is the sequence. So summary is a pulse Doppler records a low velocity flow. For velocity studies, keep sample volume at tip of the leaflets. CW Doppler records high velocity flow, interrogate at site of turbulence. Scan all planes to get a maximum velocity, and color flow mapping should cover all areas. Every view, every structure you cover with a color flow mapping and then scan to get a maximum velocity. In sinus rhythm, you take an average of 3 measurements. In if take a measurement of 5. Do not measure a post-ectopic beat because after any ventricular ectopic, there is a compensatory pause, and the next beat is very strong beat, so that will give you high velocity. Always take the help when you are recording a Doppler. Always ask the patient to hold the breath, and so that your Dopplers are stable. In right-sided velocities, because they vary with respiration, you should be very careful to effect of the respiration. So just to give an example, this is an ectopic beat. Now, just to give an example, the peak velocity was 116. After ectopic beat, it was 152. And it is an ectopic beat. So after an ectopic beat, avoid measuring because this will give you a high velocity. Now, these things will be shown to you during live demonstration because you will not understand it because, for example, Doppler gain, filter, velocity scale. So they can be, I will not show because this will be only dealt. Uh, so these are the normal velocities. As Dr. Gupta says, the mitral velocity is almost double the tricuspid. This mitral velocity almost double the tricuspid velocity. aortic velocity almost double the pulmonary velocity. And this is sometimes known as a Doppler alternance. One strong beat, one weak, but there should be no ectopic beat here. One strong beat, one weak beat, one strong beat, because you don't see it so commonly. Hence, I brought it not to confuse you, but to show you that how it looks like, which is an indication of a very poor myocardial function, and there are no ectopic beats. But here you see there are ectopic beats. So post-ectopic beat may be strong, and this will be strong like this. So any questions now from your side? We are not dealing quantitation. We are only dealing with the basics of Doppler. You can unmute yourself and ask questions or clarifications. But when a live demonstration is shown, and once you get used to Doppler, you'll find it very easy.
So can you explain the Nyquist limit of the color?
Pardon?
Nyquist point in Kalman?
New Nyquist
Yeah.
in color.
Yeah.
Say the color Doppler is also based on a pulse Doppler basis. So because it is based on a pulse Doppler basis, it can show a variability. For example, blood going towards the mitral wall, maybe something blue covered by red also. So you can see the Nyquist limit in a color flow which is based on the principle of a pulse Doppler. So we did not want to confuse you today. But the outer layer will always be towards the transducer. Outer will be red, inner will be blue. If you are away from the transducer, outer will be blue, inner will be red, which is known as a sort of a Nyquist limit, also aliasing, what you can call color for aliasing.
But how to differentiate that it is a physiological aliasing or it is pathological?
Whenever you have a doubt whether anything is physiological or pathological, go to a CW Doppler. Say aliasing, I told you aliasing is usually not a sign of very, see, we have shown you turbulent flows. Aliasing entirely different than a turbulent flow. But anytime, whether you are doing a pulse Doppler or anything, if you are doubtful whether it is physiological or pathological, go to the CW Doppler. And if your velocities are fairly normal, that means it is not a pathological one.
For
Sir,
diastolic dysfunction, we only use the pulse Doppler, not
Yes,
the
yes.
continuous
Yes,
Doppler,
because
right?
that I told you, because once you do a diastolic dysfunction, you are mainly using only a pulse Doppler. Because the CW will record everything on its own Doppler beam. But there you are concerned with only recording a mitral wall or a tissue Doppler. So there you are using a pulse Doppler always.
Thank you.
Say, remember,
Sir.
whenever you want to study a particular structure, you want to use a pulse Doppler. And in a diastolic dysfunction, we take a mitral velocities which are helpful in taking in assessment. So we always take a pulse Doppler.
Sir, one question, when we are seeing the colors like in mitral and aortic wall are very close, and when we are seeing the colors blue, red, so they didn't get mixed
Yes,
aortic
I
and mitral.
say this is a topic not for today. Sometimes whenever we take some next lecture, say, or when we take this say in a color flow also there is a sector angle. Say for example, this is a sector angle we have made a plot. So you take say in a apical 3-chamber view, the aortic valve and mitral jet may be going towards each other. So one of the limitations in assessment of an aortic stenosis is by mistake you can interrogate a mitral leaf valve. So you can take other views. You can reduce your velocity, is your color velocities width, so that you are only interrogating one blood and taking a different view. But yes, in a contiguous jet, you could, for example, as I showed you, delineation of multiple jets.
Yes.
See, that is what the color flow mapping tells you, that whether you are having also in your AS and then MR. So it is so I only told you today because we are dealing with Doppler, so that it can delineate multiple jets also and faster detection of abnormal flow. So you have to be very careful when there are two flows very close together. You have to be very careful in assessing it, and there are various methods as you proceed further how to differentiate between the two. But you are right.
Okay.
Is it right? So I'm switching on. You can see my 4-chamber view. And this is normal convention 4-chamber view where I can see LV, LA, RA, RV. This is mitral valve. This is tricuspid valve. And this is the most common view for evaluation of the mitral flow. So this is a color flow mapping. What this color flow mapping, Dr. Prashar showed you very categorically. This is a box of a color. Now look at the box of the color. Right side of the screen, you can see that this is a frame rate of 27 frames. And if I hold on this,
रिकॉर्डिंग गैलरी में जाओ तो नजर आ जाएगा.
please go to the gallery, sir, first. Stop.
Gallery is
Now I can widen up this sector of a color scale. Look, as soon as I widen my sector, my frame rate drops dramatically. If I reduce this sector, the frame rate becomes optimal. I don't say excellent, but at least it becomes optimal frame rate.
as Rakesh has said, in cardiology, every time the higher the frame rate, the better is always the recording. And I think whether you can see some aliasing here also, the outer color is red. And then you can see the blue color in between also. Good.
So you can see the aliasing with this over here, but this aliasing is whether it's physiological or pathological.
Yeah.
So what I'm going to do is I'm putting my pulse wave Doppler spectrum pattern. Now look at this pulse wave Doppler spectrum pattern. As Prashar sir said, there are two lines in between. So this is pulse wave, and this is empty in between. So it is interrogating a place only at one place, the flow velocity across this mitral valve. So that's why we notice pulse rate and sample volume at the tip of the mitral valve leaflets. I can measure this velocity as this velocity is only 85 centimeter E wave and A wave is 67 centimeters per second. Correct? Dina, can you move the screen a little to the right hand side? Now you see the velocity on this side, on the left side of the screen.
You see it is above the baseline because it's going towards the transducer.
And if I reduce this scale, now see what I'm going to do is, I'm going to put my sample volume and right side, can you read the screen a little bit on right hand side? Remove the image of Shrikant, make it smaller one. Yeah. Now look at this scale on the right hand side of the machine. This is scale of 5.5 meters per second. This is 1 meter per second. This is 0.5. This is 1. If I reduce this scale of 0.5 or 1 centimeter, what will happen? Whatever everybody was asking, so aliasing will start happening. I'm reducing the scale now. So can you see this particular phenomena of aliasing now?
You can see the mitral dog being cut off. The full of the mitral valve is not seen. It is in cut off. So that and the part of it can be seen down below. So that is aliasing.
And how to get rid of this aliasing? As Parashar sir always says, first you increase the scale to the maximum possible limits. So I'm increasing the scale to maximum possible limit. If I still cannot contain it, I'll reduce the change the baseline to the other side. So I'm changing the baseline to the other side. Now I can see very well. Or third is you can switch over to continuous wave Doppler. This is continuous wave Doppler, where you can't see any gap between this line, and now it's interrogating across all this evaluation of this line. So, and this spectrum pattern is full now. Look at the spectrum pattern which was previously earlier present by pulse wave and spectrum pattern present by continuous wave Doppler. So I'm going to show you both the patterns together. This is pulse wave. Now I'm going to go to continuous wave Doppler spectrum pattern. Bring them back together. So I'm going to get my previous pulse wave and now see a difference between pulse wave and a continuous wave. Now the velocity is almost the same. Suppose the velocity over here is 0.82 centimeter. The velocity over here is almost 0.82 or 0.89 centimeters. But when stenosis would be present, you will not be able to find a pulse wave Doppler spectrum pattern able to contain the complete velocity. Then you have to switch over to continuous wave Doppler to see how much is the velocity in those stenotic or regurgitated lesions. Same thing I'll try to show you in different format now.
Somebody has questioned that does it require separate transducers? No,
No,
only the knobs are there.
knobs are there. Now I'm focusing on my regurgitations. Now placing format of my regurgitation now. Now you can look at the clear-cut aliasing at my regurgitations. I'm increasing the gains of colors deliberately, freezing the image. This is mitral inflow pattern. This is regurgitation pattern. This shows aliasing before this line also. Other side of the line also is seen. Now I'll continue with this aliasing. And now what I said, I'll increase the scale to the maximum possible limit. Look, this is the maximum possible scale I can have. Now I'm reducing the baseline, moving the baseline in opposite direction. Still, I cannot contain this aliasing pattern. This aliasing pattern is still seen on the other side of a line also. So what do? Switch over to continuous wave Doppler spectrum pattern. Now I can increase the scale. Now I can see this velocities of almost 4 meters per second. It may be more. I'm not saying, but at least 4 meters of a flow velocity. Mitral regurgitation. And to tell you very honestly, if we happen to see a 4 meter flow velocity, I will not be comfortable at all. Because I should expect a velocity of at least 5 meters per second. Please mute your phones. And if you can't mute your phones, please log out. So look, I'm doing a spectrum again. The velocity is almost 4.5 or 5 meters per second close to. What does this mean by? MR jet regurgitation velocity is 5 meters per second. It has got a gradient of 100 millimeters of mercury. So the blood pressure of this patient is at least 100 plus LA pressures. So that's what it means by. Next, we talked about Nyquist limit. Let me switch on our colors and see on the right hand side of the screen. This is right side of the screen is, this is 52 is a Nyquist limit. What Parashar sir was trying to tell you, The colors towards the transducer is blue, red in color. Away from a transducer is blue. So blue away, red towards, that is known as BART. So in this case, if the velocity of this flow is more than 0.5 t, the flow towards the transducer is more than 5 t, it will start showing the velocity on the other side or blue in color. Now remember, indigo colors are blue, indigo, this colors of a rainbow. Those are the Vibgyor: violet, indigo, blue, green, yellow, orange, red. So looking at this velocity, I can jolly well say, look, the velocity is more than 0.53 meters per second. So I'm keeping a sample volume over here and look at this velocity. Velocity is almost 0.83 or 0.88. Categorically saying you that whatever we saw in color Doppler is shown by a Nyquist limit and CFM is adequately proved over here. Look, we were able to see a blue color or a greenish color in it, saying that the Nyquist limit is 53. So we are seeing more of a color. The velocity has to be 0.53 plus 0.53, 1.06 less than that.
Sorry, sir. Can you please repeat this? I'm not able to get
Yeah,
this.
again, I'll repeat it. I know this question I was expecting. So I'm going to freeze my image. Now look at my ECG gating now. This is my ECG gating of systole. Now this is the ECG gating of diastole. In diastole, you see a velocity in different formats. Now early diastole, you find what? Turbulence by CFM. And what this turbulence is, this is, you see a red color, you see a blue color, you see a green color. It means if you are seeing a red or blue colors, it means the velocity is more than 5.3 meters per second, because other side velocity is blue or green. So velocity has to be more than 0.53. But later part of this diastole, you're only seeing a red color. Red and slightly blue-green, it means the velocity is less than the initial velocity. If I keep my sample volume over here and record my 2 dimensions image, so color Doppler first. Why always color Doppler? It tells you where to keep my sample volume in the flow color line. We have to be as parallel to the blood flow as possible. Now look, in initial part I said the velocity is more than initially, that is 0.88 or 98 or 83, and later part is only 0.74. What I mean to say is, whenever this Nyquist limit is over, the flow toward this color is only 53. If you happen to see a multiple colors, it means the Nyquist limit is crossed and you see the other colors of this side. That much you remember, that's all in clinical applications. And now look at this 5-chamber view. If I keep my sample volume, same thing you're seeing over here. Now you're able to see red and green and yellow colors. It means the velocity of aortic wall is also high. So I'm going to see the aortic flow velocity by keeping a sample volume to LVOT. LVOT is before aortic valve. Aortic valve is distal to aortic valve. Now over here, you can see a pulse rate Doppler spectrum pattern in the aortic valve. Now same aliasing, I'm going to increase my speed as much as scale as much as possible. Reduce my gain a little bit. But despite all measures, I'm not able to contain my aliasing by turbulence, not aliasing by CFM. Now this is aortic valve. So I switch over, I move my baseline up. Now I'm able to contain my Doppler spectrum pattern. I can measure the velocity looking at the tip. And same thing, if I can't do it, I'll switch over to continuous wave Doppler. Look, I can now measure the velocity up to 5 meters or 6 meters per second. And this is very well useful when we are doing an aortic valve stenosis evaluation. So at your level, whenever you should start with color flow first. First sample volume, then pulse wave, keep the baseline in the center. And if you happen to see a Doppler spectrum pattern comfortably, Don't bother about it. Don't shift to continuous wave Doppler. If you can't, then switch over to continuous wave Doppler. Similarly, for aortic valve, this is the best window for aortic valve. 5-chamber view. We keep a sample volume distal to the aortic valve leaflet. And now I can't contain it, so I'm switching over to continuous wave Doppler. One more thing, what we'll be saying again and again. This is like over here, prior to aortic valve. This is known as LVOT. Look, LVOT velocity would be less or almost equal in case of non-obstructive aortic valve. Whatever the blood which is flowing through LVOT has to flow through the aortic valve. Majority of time, aortic valves start becoming thickened. Now the velocity has increased in this patient who is almost 38 years of age. So borderline increase has happened and it has not crossed the normal limit of aortic valve. Normal limit of aortic valve is 1.7. So it's only 1.46 meters per second.
If you show the pulse Doppler, they can see what is the high filter has been kept so high that you cannot see the base of the pulse Doppler.
Okay, sir, I'll show them again.
Because that's so that they should know how to use the filters. You see.
Now you see what Dr. Prash's study is showing. This is what the baselines are cut completely. To get rid of this baseline, I have to reduce my filter. So I'm going to adjust my filters so that I'm able to see my baseline. So I'm reducing my filters. Now I can see the
Now
baseline.
you see it has come for a good measurement. Now it can go. If your filter is too high, you cut at the base. If your filter is very low, there are a lot of unwanted echoes which come.
So this is what is known as filter optimization. I know that these two classes would be very, very difficult for you, but we'll make sure that repeat all these two classes together once more before we go ahead further, because everything is based on these two classes. So,
Sir, can we comment on regurgitation while seeing pulse wave or color wave? Because in some echo machines, the color flow is not so good. So can we comment on pulse wave basis?
pulse wave basis, we can comment on regurgitations, but regurgitation for mitral, we do not consider mitral regurgitation. For regurgitation of tricuspid valve, now I am focusing on tricuspid valve.
Yes, sir.
Now look at the regurgitation of the tricuspid. What you mean is, this is color flow mapping. Is small or trivial, mild or small, but the velocity to be measured is in tricuspid valve. Whether you take mild, moderate, or severe, that does not make any difference. It's a question of velocity which is being interrogated. Now I'm measuring the velocity of a TRZ. Very good Doppler spectral pattern has come. This is TRZ velocity of 2.19 meters per second, giving a gradient of 19 millimeter.
Because if you don't have a good color Doppler, then a crude method is you put a sample volume in the mitral wall just in the LA side. And if you see a systolic turbulence, that means there is some high velocity flow. And then you can put a CW if your color is not there. But nowadays the color is present in all the machines also. So when
What
color
Dr.
was not
Prashas
there,
is showing, this is what we.
Yes, sir.
So I'm just doing like
Thank you, sir.
sample volume.
on the LA side,
mitral
or the
wave.
MR will be on the LA side.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
And then whenever you see a maximum, switch over to continuous wave Doppler.
You know that mitral wall opens in diastole, so the flow coming down after diastole is the systole. So that will be the MRZ.
So
Now,
why there is a large and small wave means E or A wave? What is the meaning, sir?
initial emptying of a mitral valve is also E wave. If you look at the mitral flow pattern, that if you look at the mitral cycle, cardiac cycle, whenever the mitral valve opens, this is known as initial emptying, then subsequently known as diastasis, and then it will kick. Now, this reminds me of Dr. Parash's first sentence when he started his talk, that you people must not have opened your book for last 30 years at all. This is E wave. Look at the beginning of diastole. This is initial emptying. Then comes a period of diastasis. This is atrial kick, which you see. Whatever is seen, blood is left into the left atrium. It quickly pushes to left ventricle before the systole begins. So this is known as E wave. This is known as A wave of the mitral Doppler spectrum. Is that clear?
Well, A wave
Yes, sir.
contributes to almost 20% of the cardiac output. And that is why if the patients of atrial fibrillation, they lose A wave and they develop all the problems. So that you have to read, you have got, I think, Doppler book or something.
We'll come back again and again. You can clear your doubt, but please read. I know everyone is a big practitioner, no doubt about it. But this is something new which will add to your practice. It will give you directly and indirectly a lot of benefits. So any other questions for a color flow, Doppler mapping, pulse wave, continuous wave? Pulse wave is again site specific. Continuous wave is not site specific. It's a flow across all the valves. I'll give you an example right now over here. I'm going to show you a flow where you will be able to see a diastolic flow also in a mitral flow, systolic flow also in the mitral. Anyway, can't see in this patient, but obviously we can see sometime a systolic flow in my mitral flow also showing a double wave of a diastolic flow. I'm trying to show it again and again. Yes, I think I'll be able to show this time. Anyway, so any question at this moment? I know you have to go back and read. We'll upload these lectures on a YouTube. You can go to the www.echocourse.in and you'll find on online all these 2 lectures over there.
Don't feel shy in asking for a clarification. No question is a silly question. So always don't keep any doubt with you. Whether by email or by phone, you must clarify your doubts.
So this patient is having so much of turbulence. This is a normal patient or what, sir?
Normal patient. The one we see a turbulence by CFM, but the Doppler flow pattern shows a normal flow velocity. I can get rid of this turbulence completely. But the issue is, you look at the Nyquist limit, you know, person right side look at this Nyquist limit, only 53 centimeters. We keep this Nyquist limit to 53 for reasons because all parameters of aortic mitral stenosis, aortic regurgitation, mitral regurgitation, they have been kept at the parameters of 50 to 60 centimeters. Now look at this aliasing. I'll disappear this aliasing completely. Just wait. I'm going to make you disappear this aliasing. Now look, your aliasing is gone. It's not there in a mitral valve, not there in the aortic valve. How did it happen?
Small aliasing is there.
Very small as compared to the previous aliasing has disappeared. How did it disappear? Because I changed the scale from 53 to 63 over here. 68.
Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
But in this changing the scale, I'll be underestimating my grade, underestimating my valves. Now you can see a better mitral regurgitation jet over here, but I'm underestimating my mitral regurgitation jet over here.
Then how to put it at a perfect level, the scaling, like 50.
Scale
What is the
is
normal level actually?
50 to 60. That's why we keep at 53, 55, whatever your machine accepts. Registration jet has become very tiny. Now look at the same thing again. I'm going to adjust my scale. Now this is 54. Now look at this mitral registration jet. This is my mitral registration jet. So this is mild, and that was trivial. So we have to keep this scale to 50 to 60 only. Second important thing, what we have to have optimization of color gains. Now, this is what the color gains you are seeing. Now I'm going to increase my gains in the colors. Now you start seeing a garbage. Can you see the garbage over here? This is all garbage which is seen over here. So to reduce this garbage, I'm reducing my color gains. Now all this garbage disappears. I'm optimized for my color gains. So you have to sit on your machine, press all button and see what exactly is happening.
Sir, this is only for learning purpose only, na? But otherwise, the setting is fixed on the right side.
The setting is fixed, no doubt about it.
Yes.
Everybody has got a mobile. How many keys do you operate the mobile? Look,
Many a time you may have to change a setting.
yeah,
Whether
I'm
it's a
showing
doctor or
the
so.
same thing, sir. Look, I see a very good visualization of endocardium out here, correct? Now I'm changing the setting for this probe. Now look at the endocardial setting now. If you can't see it still, I'm going to make it better. This is just utilizing my machine. Machine, they'll come and give you the machine. But you'll have to learn to play with the machines. I can't see. I'll change my colors to aqua, temporal map, then gold, to look at my contraction of the endocardium. I have to take out the machines, images. That's what we have to do. So all these things, you have to do it by yourself. Nobody is going to tell you, look, do this. This is image optimization. And now you see a lot of gains or this thing gains in the center. So I'm going to optimize my gain in the center by changing my TGCs. And how beautifully now you can see your chords. You can see a dancing chords also. So this is all you have to sit and do it continuously. And if you really want to do echocardiography, forget about your lunch. Give that lunch to some person. Practice 2 hours during lunchtime, all your echoes.
Sir, TRZ we mainly use for PH, but in MRZ, is it for any clinical use? MRZ?
MRZ is for a very good clinical use. Suppose you have a patient of your acute MI in your clinic. Sisters tell you the constant blood pressure is always 120/80, correct?
Yes, sir.
So if I put my Doppler spectrum pattern over here, take my continuous wave Doppler, as I showed you, his gradient is almost 5 meters per second. So what will be his blood pressure? I can assess the blood pressure with this gradients. This MRZ is between LV to LA. So LV is pushing blood into the LA, and LV in absence of any aortic stenosis is the same pressure as my blood pressure is. But LV pressure has to be more because the LA has got some inherent pressures. So we add LA pressure 94 plus 10, his blood pressure would be at least 104 millimeters of mercury. If I see my TRZ only 3 meters per second, 4 meters per second, it means the gradient is 64. If my LA pressure is 10, my blood pressure is 74 millimeters of mercury. That's how we look at blood pressure in a patient who is at a emergency room. And when you tell us it's 120/80, and we tell you no, it's not 120/80, it's low. Because the driving force lies in LV. Same principle is on right hand side. The driving force is RV. Whatever the blood pressure pushes in from RV to RA, that is a TRZ gradient. Add RA pressure to it, that becomes pulmonary artery pressure. And if same pressure is aortic pressures.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
So any other questions before we stop?
So by
Sir, can you please tell me the site from where we can reread these videos? You just
Site is www.ecocourse.in, our website. On right side, top of the site, you will find online echoes, online echo training.
Sir, can you please repeat how to measure BP? How to assess blood pressure?
Very simple. Now look at this. I'm showing my mitral regurgitation jet. My MR jet is almost 4 to 5 meters per second. Now the gradient is 100 millimeters of mercury. This LV is pushing blood into the LA. LA has got its own pressure. Suppose it's 10. Normal pressure LA is 10. So 198 plus 10, 108 is his blood pressure in the absence of any aortic stenosis.
Sir, if there is no MR, then how can we see the blood pressure?
A majority of time you will find a MR. Take my word. Sir, your comment, sir?
No, I said, what is the idea? Why don't you measure by a sphygmomanometer? Why do you always want to take the help of a jet of MR or AS or anything?
No, sir, I was
because-
asking about the clinical use of MR because TRZ
No,
is mainly used
It's a
for
lot
PH.
of clinical use. When the chapter on MR comes, all the clinical uses will be told. Don't
Okay,
worry.
sir.
Ah.
Yes, sir.
But
At
sir,
this
even we were
present moment-
fascinated by this blood pressure measurement thing, sir. We didn't knew this thing before. So something.
So you'll find many new things when the class keeps on going. So please look at these videos again and again. Once you understand these videos, this will become easy. But you have to practice a lot. That is the most important thing.
So why we are reducing this NICOS point to 40 or less than 40 when we are doing the PISA assessment in mitral valve?
In PISA assessment, we are not doing reducing it. If you look at my NICOS limit on the right hand side, you know, throw some more to the left hand side screen. In PISA assessment, we are not doing this reducing it. We are moving the baseline in the direction of. I'll show you that what exactly we do. So I'm going to keep my image again, switch on my colors, and then this reduce to 40 centimeters per second. Just a second, 40 of plus 44. And now move the baseline down in the side of jet. Now look at NICOS limit. This is 61 and this is 26.
Yes, sir.
What happens with this NICOS limit? In patient of a severe MR, we are able to see a good PISA over here. This method.
Right,
And
sir.
we have to measure the radius of that PISA, and that's why we move in this particular fashion, moving in the direction of a jet, so that this becomes low, this becomes high, and then we use this PISA, this NICOS limit for aliasing to calculate our regurgitant volumes.
We are
We'll
taking
be showing that one by one.
yeah. Yes. Then we are taking LAC in volume top or bottom, sir?
Aliasing volume or aliasing
LAC in velocity, sir. We are taking
26.
bottom, no, sir? Yeah.
Bottom.
Right. Okay, sir.
I'm sure like many of you sitting over here, those who are doing a lot of mitral regurgitation jet work, utilize PISA. I'm not saying no, but at the same time, PISA sometimes is very difficult to create or to get the PISA volumes because the multiple equations which volumes sometimes they become so defective that we cannot really look at those PISA as a alone method.
Okay, sir.
So I'm just trying to look at some MR. Now this is a patient with a Nyquist limit of 53. Acquisition which we have done it. Now, although this is eccentric jet and I can't change this, although I can change the Nyquist limit, but I'm not able to change the velocity pattern. So what PISA, what we tried to show was whenever the time will come, we'll try to organize that patient and show you the PISA. I'm sorry. What exactly somebody was asking was,
Yeah.
this is what we try to look at PISA with the first aliasing velocity. Once we move the scale down, we are able to see this velocity much better as a rounded pattern.
Right.
Maybe in some other patient, I'm able to show you this PISA transfer radial vacuum. Known as MS and TS. Let me show you, try to show in E where we had a good PISA possible. Yeah, we have got a good PISA. Now you see the PISA. Now you can see a multiple hemispheres in this patient.
Yeah.
This is the opening, this is one aliasing and this is second aliasing line. This is not for mitral regurgitation, this is for aortic mitral stenosis, not for mitral regurgitation, but aortic mitral stenosis PISA. So these seem kind of the things we can produce and then measure the aliasing velocity from this point to this in MR cases, which is 0.38 over here. And I'm not really sure like how much I'm correct because I'm not utilizing PISA for mitral stenosis. But I can definitely utilize this PISA for aortic stenosis. Mitral regurgitation. So what I just wanted to show you what this PISA is. Okay.
Yes, sir. Clear, sir.
So I'm stopping over here and I'll request everybody to post their questions on WhatsApp or email so that we are able to answer you, and we'll try to take your classes next time onwards, always on Sunday only. Because a lot of hue and cry is there when we are doing away from a Sunday. So maybe we'll try to adjust somewhere a little earlier on Sunday so that everybody can be a participant on this. And that's all I'll say. And we'll stop over here. And with this,